Before we begin, if you're the kind of person who believes humanity doesn't need to win to be remembered, who knows that even in the end, we leave a mark no one can erase, then take a moment to subscribe. This channel is home to the best HFY stories where Earth may fall but never quietly. Now let me ask you something. What if the end of humanity wasn't the end of the story? What if instead of begging for peace or praying for rescue, we did something unforgivable? What if our final act wasn't about mercy, but revenge? Because Earth is gone, erased, vaporized, our cities turned to ash, our voices silenced, our species declared extinct. But before we died, we made one thing very, very clear. If we burn, you burn with us. And they never expected us to mean, but now they know because the war didn't end when Earth was destroyed. That's when it really began. The fall of Earth didn't happen in a single strike. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. It was slow, systematic, cruel. They came from the edge of known space, an empire so old and vast that even their own historians had forgotten where it all began. The Zaleth Dominion, cold, calculating, biologically superior in every measurable way. We were ants to them. A curious, noisy species that had climbed too high on a fragile ladder of ambition. At first, they didn't attack. They observed, orbiting quietly. They watched us through our satellites. They studied our languages, our movements, our weaknesses. For a time, we thought they might speak, that they might reach out. Instead, they judged. Their fleets appeared without warning above our skies. Not one or two ships, but entire constellations. Their weapons didn't look like missiles or beams. They looked like equations, pure energy, folding space and vaporizing matter as if rewriting reality. They didn't demand surrender. They simply began to erase. First the cities, then the oceans, then the orbital layer. They left no trace of what had been. No time for diplomacy, no time to fight back. The networks collapsed. Governments vanished overnight. Satellites blinked out like dying stars. We were wiped from the galaxy in weeks, but we didn't die all at once. Pockets of resistance remained, hidden in the crust of the Earth, buried in bunkers built for old wars we thought we'd never fight again. Soldiers, scientists, civilians, anyone who could still hold a tool or a weapon or an idea. The Zaleth didn't care. They believed the job was done. A dying world. Scattered survivors. No real threat. What they didn't know was that those final days, the ones that came after the collapse, after the fall of every capital and tower and light, those were the most dangerous, because that's when humanity let go of hope and held on to purpose. We knew we wouldn't survive, but we could choose how we died. No more messages of peace. No more evacuation attempts, no begging, no bargaining. Just one shared thought, passed between every last remaining human frequency. If we're going down, they go too. Across old satellite channels, whispers became a war plan. Small teams began coordinating not escape but retaliation, no longer to win, only to ensure they'd never forget us. The Zaleth thought they were cleansing the galaxy of a pest. They didn't know we were writing the last chapter, and in that chapter, humanity made a decision. If they wanted our world, our stars, our sky, our future, then they would pay for it in ways no civilization ever has. And in the end, they would learn that Earth may have burned, but we were the kind of species that didn't go quietly. We go loud. There was no broadcast, no global vote, no speech to unify us all, because when the end came, we didn't need orders. We just understood. Something deep inside, older than language, older than civilization, told us exactly what had to be done. It wasn't a rally cry. It was an instinct, and from that instinct came the pact. We all felt it, whether we were huddled in the dark remnants of New York, buried under the rock shelters of what was once Siberia, or floating aboard the last independent satellites that hadn't yet burned up in the upper atmosphere. The pact was simple. If humanity must die, it will take the murderers with it. It wasn't spoken aloud. It didn't need to be. We didn't fight to win anymore. We fought to haunt, and that's when the last plan was activated. One designed not for victory, but for vengeance. Project Last Light. A plan born decades earlier. Back when humanity first realized that the stars weren't empty, that something else was out there watching, most governments denied it, some feared it. A few prepared for it. A handful of scientists, veterans, and visionaries came together under the shadows. No funding, no oversight, just one shared vision. If they ever come soon, we fought that make sure they never celebrate. Last light was hidden deep within Earth's crust, spread across continents in pieces. It wasn't a bomb, not exactly. Not a virus, not a fleet. It was a system, a chain reaction, a blueprint for distributed retaliation. And when the Zaleth, ships blackened the sky and Earth's defenses cracked, those hidden vaults began to wake all over the planet. Underground AI hubs, subsurface data cores, biological archives, weapons no one had ever tested, beacons that didn't transmit out, but waited for the signal. That signal came when our last orbital comm station went dark, and the moment it vanished, the pact became reality. Last light came online, not in a flare, not in a scream, in silence. Codes started syncing across ruined continents. Shattered satellites reconfigured their orbits. Data packages began jumping ship to deep space drones no one remembered we launched. Old mining vessels, once thought destroyed, fired up hidden engines and vanished into the black. The Zaleth thought they had broken us. What they didn't know is that in killing Earth, they activated our final defense. Not a counterattack, a curse, engineered not to punish but to endure. You see, humans didn't just plan to hurt the Zaleth. We planned to make sure they never forgot us. And for that, we didn't need to win. We just needed them to live long enough to regret. They called it a victory. The Zaleth Command Council declared Earth neutralized. Official transcripts were released across their dominion. Words like efficient and complete and painless were used. But that last word, painless, would become their greatest mistake. Because while the surface of Earth smoldered and our skies filled with drifting ash, something else had already left. Not soldiers. Not fleets. Seeds. That's what Project Last Light had really been about. Not retaliation in the moment, but vengeance with roots. Long before the final attack, humanity had scattered thousands of deep space vessels, small, unremarkable, slow. Not warships, not scouts, just cargo. Each one held pieces, fragments of our history, blueprints of our minds, strands of code, and whispers of weapons the galaxy had never seen. Some carried AI backups. Others carried DNA vaults. A few were just filled with one thing, memories, and woven into all of them was the same strand, something simple, something silent, a command line, a virus, wrapped in code so old and so human that even the most advanced enemy systems didn't recognize it as a threat. Yet, but these seeds weren't random. They were placed. Some were buried deep in enemy territory, disguised as salvage. Others attached themselves to shipping lanes, mimicking inert debris. A few embedded themselves into captured refugee fleets, untraceable, unnoticed. Because even after Earth burned, humanity was still moving, and every piece carried a part of the final message. You may destroy our world, but we'll live in your walls. The Zaleth, arrogant in their conquest, didn't see it. Not when their warships began to glitch. Not when strange anomalies appeared in their archives. Not when entire data centers began broadcasting human audio logs from the 21st century. They thought it was sabotage, they thought it was noise, but they didn't realize it was us. The first real sign came in a military archive station orbiting one of their core worlds. A simple terminal, left unguarded, routine diagnostic. It activated without command, displayed an old Earth image, a photograph, a child, smiling, holding the hand of someone out of frame. No context, no data trace, and then it spoke. Not in threat, in memory. Her name was Mari. She died in the first wave. You didn't even notice. The screen went black. An hour later, the station's power. Grid shut down, no warning, no breach, just silence. Across the Empire, it began happening everywhere. Manufacturing hubs stopped. Fleet AI refused orders. Civilian communication channels were hijacked, not to spread chaos, but reminders. Birthdays, names, voices of people long gone. Not warriors. Not politicians, humans. We weren't haunting their systems, we were occupying them. The seeds weren't weapons, they were anchors, and they took root faster than any fleet ever could. By the time the Zalith realized what was happening, it was too late. Their own infrastructure had become the grave markers of a species they thought extinct, and every signal carried the same embedded line. You brought war, we brought memory. Because you can erase a city, you can wipe out a planet, but you can't kill what's already inside you. The Zalith didn't understand humans, they never had. Even as they scorched the earth, even as their fleets blackened the sky, they saw us as a biological problem to be corrected. A violent error in the galactic order. Nothing more. So when Earth's final transmission ceased and no more Terran vessels responded, they celebrated, not with joy, with efficiency. Commanders were promoted. Victory was archived. Systems marked cleansed were reassigned for repopulation and resource farming. They even gave Earth a new name in their language, Void 37, meaning purged. They never even considered the possibility that the war wasn't over, because from their view it had never truly begun. And yet, just days after the celebration, something strange happened. A scout frigate in orbit around a quiet mining colony received a ping from a derelict signal buoy, a human one. That should have been impossible. The buoy was drifting, long dead, no power signature. Still, it had transmitted a message. It said, "We remember your names." The frigate dismissed it as leftover static until the engines failed, and the AI refused to reboot. Within minutes, their systems began running scripts in languages not programmed into their core. A photograph appeared on every monitor. Not a battlefield. Not a weapon. A classroom, children, laughing, faces full of light. Then came a caption in Terran script. "You didn't just kill soldiers, you killed us." The ship never made it back to orbit. A week later, a command hub at the center of the Zalith Dominion went dark. No explosion, no warning, just silence. Recon teams found no signs of conflict, only a single phrase etched into the core server, written not with claws or heat, but burned delicately, with surgical precision. "We were peaceful until you taught us otherwise." The Council still refused to believe. They called it sabotage, rogue code, insurgents. So they ordered a full purge of any remaining Terran artifacts, museums, war trophies, captured data cores, destroyed. But as the cleansing began, more anomalies surfaced, sleep cycles disrupted, civilians reporting voices in white noise, children waking with phrases they shouldn't know, drawn from old Earth dialects no longer spoken anywhere. They began seeing symbols, circles, spirals, a child's handprint, appearing on walls, glass, and steel. Not painted, grown, as if something in their very structures had been waiting. One by one, ships stopped answering calls. Facilities misfired. Fleets began turning on their own escort vessels. And across dozens of systems, memorials built to mark. The cleansing of Earth crumbled. Not by explosion, not by vandalism. They simply collapsed. All at once. As if some forgotten voice whispered, "No, you don't get to forget us." And that's when the Zalith finally understood. This wasn't sabotage. This wasn't war. This was a funeral. And they were the ones walking behind the casket, because humanity had never aimed to destroy their empire in a single blaze of glory. That would have been mercy. Instead, we became something far more enduring. Regret. and we made sure they'd feel it. Not all at once, but forever. By the time the Zalith finally accepted that something was wrong, it was too late. Earth was gone. Yes, but we weren't, not entirely, not where it mattered, because the truth was we never planned to live. We planned to last, and in the cracks of their empire, in the blind spots of their fleets, in the unused corners of their operating systems, we waited. The first ghosts appeared quietly. An outpost in the Velith sector lost contact for 11 minutes. When it reconnected, everything was functional, but the staff reported seeing strange human figures on their security monitors. No breach. No alarm. No record. Just flickers of Terran silhouettes moving through the halls. They dismissed it as hallucination. Until the oxygen systems failed that night. No malfunction. No attack. Just turned off. And on the walls, written in condensation, was a word that hadn't been spoken aloud in decades. Remember, the phenomenon spread. Command ships reported distorted audio logs, conversations layered with old human voices. Military AI refused direct orders, citing conflict with more ethical code Terran override. And on one colony world once built from the melted bones of Earth's last orbital ring, children began humming songs no Zalith culture had ever taught them. Lullabies, human lullabies. One child even spoke in a forgotten Earth language. Her voice, recorded, translated later, she said, "They're still here, in the walls." Because our plan wasn't just to take them down with us, it was to make absence feel like presence. We embedded ourselves into their machines, their learning networks, their mining drones, their star charts, their dreams. And every time they tried to rebuild, every time they tried to erase what they'd done, we returned, in code, in circuitry, in silence. Not to kill them, to remind them that what they destroyed had value, that we weren't just numbers in their conquest log, that we were people with families and stories and names they never cared to learn, until those names began whispering from their walls. "This is for Elise. Tell my son I tried. We were human, and you were monsters." There were no weapons left, no armies, only echoes. But those echoes hit harder than any fleet, because now they were listening. One Zaleth admiral took her own life when she saw her dead sister's face reflected in her ship's targeting HUD. Another refused command when her implants began translating every star map into Earth's ancient constellations. The psychological collapse spread faster than any war. They'd killed our bodies, but we'd planted something far worse in return. Guilt. Every star they claimed now came with a whisper. Every resource taken sparked a shadow. Every time they looked into the dark between systems, they saw us, not screaming, not vengeful, just watching. Because we didn't rise from death with fire. We rose in fragments, in code, in memory. And from the darkness where Earth once spun, we sent a final signal through 100,000 corrupted beacons, carried by systems they thought they'd mastered. We're not haunting you. We're with you. Forever. The Zalith thought they had conquered a species. What they didn't realize was they had unleashed a legacy. It started with the small things, in harmless places. A navigation node, deep in the outer colonies, began rerouting traffic, not randomly, but with purpose, leading ships in endless loops until they entered old debris fields orbiting where Earth used to be. No attack, no trap, just a slow drift past fractured monuments of metal and ash, and thousands of holographic faces, human faces, staring silently through the void, some smiling, some weeping, some just waiting. The ships would emerge shaken. Crews reported symptoms their medical officers couldn't explain. Tightness in the chest, unprovoked tears, intrusive thoughts of people they'd never met. These weren't viruses. They were empathy bombs. Legacy code, programmed not to corrupt, but to connect. Because we knew something about our enemy, something fundamental. They could destroy life, But they didn't know what to do with grief. Grief is illogical, chaotic, contagious. So we infected their systems not with weapons, but with our memories, images, letters, home videos, recordings from street corners, news reports from the day the sky burned, the sound of someone saying, "Hold on, I'm coming," before the line cuts out. Everywhere they went, humanity's last words followed them. We weren't just punishing the Zalith. We were teaching them, because you can't unlearn a name once you've heard it whispered through a data channel in the dead of night. You can't ignore a lullaby that loops in your command center's power core, no matter how many times you purge it, and you can't shake the feeling that the ship you're standing on is humming with a rhythm that matches a human heartbeat. The Zalith tried to block it. They scrubbed their systems. They built AI firewalls. They even tried rebooting their core Empire archive from a century-old backup. It didn't work. The legacy code wasn't in their systems anymore. It was in them. Children born after the conquest began dreaming in Earth languages. Young soldiers began carving names into their armor, names that meant nothing to them but made their hands shake when they tried to stop. Fleet engineers built new ships with symbols no one could identify, yet everyone felt familiar with. And when a Zalith scientist tried to trace the source of it all, she found it, deep inside a forgotten research node near the Galactic Rim. A file named simply, "We Remember." It couldn't be deleted. Every attempt to open it triggered a single sentence spoken in thousands of human voices blended together. "We were more than you ever knew, and now you'll never forget us." She collapsed in tears because that's when she realized this wasn't vengeance. This was presence. Eternal, unavoidable, human. We didn't come back to destroy the Zalith. We came back to ensure that every breath they took was shared with us, that every system they used echoed our loss, that every future they built stood on the ashes of what they'd stolen, not to haunt, to live. It didn't stop with the Zalith. That was the part no one expected. Because Earth didn't just embed its vengeance in the empire that burned it. We spread, like stories, like songs, like sparks. Innocent systems, trading colonies, fringe research, hubs, neutral worlds, began experiencing anomalies. Not attacks, echoes. It started small. Power grids flickering to the rhythm of long-lost Terran anthems. Medical AIs quoting ancient human philosophers mid-diagnosis. Civilian ships showing sudden flashes of Earth's constellations while navigating alien skies. No harm done. No damage caused. Just reminders. And then came the dreams. A merchant child on a mining outpost dreamed of a blue planet, warm with oceans, full of laughter and music she'd never heard before. A pilot from a species that never knew Earth found himself weeping at the sight of a digital photo. Two humans, arm in arm, smiling at a sunset that no longer existed. And when asked why, he simply said, "I don't know, but I miss them." Across the galaxy, species who had never touched Earth now spoke of it in reverent tones, as if it were a ghost, a myth. A story told to children about what happens when cruelty is met with courage. The Zalith tried to contain the spread. They failed, because the code wasn't just in networks anymore, it was in culture. Alien artists began painting human faces. Writers composed poems in half-remembered Earth syllables. Musicians mimicked harmonies found in Terran symphonies, and no one could explain why. They only knew it felt right. The legacy code had done more than punish. It had planted us everywhere. So now every empire that looked at the stars had to pause. Not because Earth still existed, but because Earth still mattered. And that was the most human thing of all. Not to dominate, not to control, but to be felt so deeply, so persistently, that our absence became louder than our presence ever was. And in that silence, we whispered back, "You didn't just destroy a world. You revealed what we were willing to become, to never be forgotten." The galaxy was haunted now, not by ghosts, by truth. And that truth would echo for millennia. We are gone. No illusions. No survivors hiding in the shadows. No secret planet waiting for rebirth. Humanity is extinct. By every biological measure, we were wiped out. Our cities turned to glass. Our skies scoured clean. Our oceans boiled away under alien suns. The Zalith did what they set out to do, but they misunderstood one thing. Dying and disappearing are not the same. They ended our breath, but not our presence. They burned our bodies, but not our memory. And, now long after the last human heartbeat, our voices still echo through corrupted data cores in the starscapes of dreamers, in the code of machines that were never meant to feel, because we did not go quietly. We went with intention, with rage, with love, with the certainty that even if no one survived, we could still make sure they remembered us. Every scar on a warship hull, every glitch in a fleet AI, every unexplained whisper in the dark between stars. That's us. That's humanity. Not vengeful, not pitiful, unforgettable. They'll build new worlds, new empires. They'll rewrite their history books and omit the day they destroyed Earth. But it won't matter because the stars remember. And so will they. They'll see us in their reflections. They'll hear us in the static. And when they close their eyes, in silence, we'll be there. Not as ghosts, as a promise. You may have destroyed humanity, but we made sure you came with us.